On today's Locked On Senators, it's a Belleville Sens playoff game day. We'll have a full preview of tonight's matchup against the Toronto Marlies.
And in the NHL playoffs, two teams are worried about getting swept with two losses last night.
We'll get into a full discussion around the NHL playoffs, plus the hockey world is mourning the death of a legend. All that's coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 1033 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on a classic Monopoly. Join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store and Google Play. You can also follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today is Friday, April 26th, and Pilsy, that could have been our Ottawa Senators out there getting swept in the first round. That could have been us.
Yeah, I mean, if the New York Islanders, if the Tampa Bay Lightning, if the Washington Capitals are all good enough to get swept in the first round, why can't the Ottawa Senators have been in that place? But, I mean, all jokes aside, Ross, the Islanders one, you kind of saw that coming. The Washington Capitals, sure, they're only down 2-0, and you don't lose a playoff series till you lost at home, so we'll see what happens there. But the Tampa Bay Lightning being down 3-0 to the Florida Panthers is shocking to me. No pun intended.
It makes no sense. Now, nice pun. Now, these have all been close games. There's the OT winner in Game 2. Game 3, it's a 5-3 score as well. But that one, again, gets buried with an empty net goal. So for all intensive purposes, this has been a one-goal series. Game 1, 3-2, the final score. But the teams that know how to win are the ones that get through this time of year. Not that Tampa doesn't know how to win. Obviously, two cups and another final will tell you that. But the level that the Florida Panthers have been playing at now for basically since Keith Tkachuk called them out a year and a half ago after they stunk in Ottawa has been an incredible run. So it does kind of, as a Sens fan, make me a little, I don't know, actually, if it makes me mad, because I could spin zone this into a positive, but Brady, again, watching Matthew Tkachuk doing his thing in the playoffs, up to 3 goals in the series now. He's been a difference maker there. Like, I'll ask you, is it good for the motivation? He said it motivated him last year. Or is it him being like, well, this looks fun, I kind of want to do this, whether it's in Ottawa or somewhere else?
Yeah, I think you could spin zone it either way, Ross. The one thing that hit me, I was watching the highlights of that game, and they said Matthew Tkachuk gets his 20th playoff goal. And I was like, Jesus.
I take Brady 20 Tkachuk, playoff games.
That's what I'm saying. Like, Brady Tkachuk hasn't even sniffed a playoff game, and Matthew Tkachuk has 20 playoff goals. Like, that's tough. Ross, where I'm looking at this more at a different angle, though. Sure, there's the Tkachuk angle, and there is different ways you can look at that. But for me, I'm looking at this being like, are we witnessing the Tampa Bay Lightning's funeral here? Like, is this going to be the end of the Lightning's reign in the Atlantic Division?
Well, if that's your thought process, then do you think there's a chance that we're one game away from the longest serving head coach in the National Hockey League, Jon Cooper, since 2013, when Ben Bishop was his starting goalie?
Yeah.
Wasn't even. He precedes Ben Bishop in Tampa. Think about that trade for Corey Conacher, how long ago that was.
Yeah, that's nuts.
That. Could Jon Cooper be in the coaching market this offseason?
I mean, if he is, he skyrockets to top on the list, at least for me.
The only problem is he's the type of coach who he picks his next team. Like, he's the kind of coach where a team would fire their coach to hire him.
Big time, like Buffalo did for Lindy Ruff. But the thing is, Ross, like, if I'm Tampa, maybe that's the way you go. It doesn't seem like Steven Stamkos is going to be back. And then if Stamkos
he's coming to Ottawa with Jon Cooper.
Yeah, package deal. And then you're like, okay, we're letting go of our franchise captain. Maybe it's time to let go of our longtime coach as well. And maybe they really try to shake things up there. So I don't know. That's what I'm focusing on with this series. Is this could be the death of the Tampa Bay Lightning. At least the Tampa Bay Lightning that we know, that had been champions, the toughest team in the East, the toughest team in the Atlantic, all those things. That could be coming to an end here.
The other series where it's 2-0, but not great, because talk about losing at home. That's when you're in trouble. The Dallas Stars lost both on home ice to Vegas. Pete DeBoer, pretty good coach as well. So I'm watching for Pete DeBoer and Jon Cooper. I think it's highly unlikely that either of them is let go.
Yeah.
But if they are, the Senators should be calling nonstop and trying to get them to come at least meet with the Ottawa Senators. We had a full discussion yesterday on the Senators head coaching search, the latest from Bruce Garriock. If you want just that clip, we've posted it individually on YouTube as well. Meanwhile, the Washington Capitals have Spencer Carberry. He's in his first year as head coach. I would almost say they overachieved in a sense. So he's going to be safe. And then Patrick Wall was hired during the season. So he's safe as well, even though the Carolina Hurricanes are up 3-0 on the Isles. And what a difference Freddie Anderson has made there. The team that he would have left had to have had good goaltending if they were comfortable with letting him go. Wouldn't they have?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because the reason they let him go is his numbers.
Who was it?
The Toronto Maple Leafs. His numbers were good, but he wasn't able to come up with those big saves in big moments. And maybe it wasn't Freddie that was the problem. Let's just say that.
Fredzilla. I don't know how I like that nickname.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's better than him being called the Great Dane too. Obviously, he's kind of like the class of Danish goaltenders, because then we'd be in trouble. We'd be like, we can't be living in the. It's like calling Pat Maroon the Big Rig. Like, we know that's Chris Phillips. Like, get out of here with that. I know that the American marketplace has taken hold of that nickname. Sure, 3 straight Stanley Cups can do that to a guy's kind of aura around the league. Get you a nice nickname here or there, but real ones know Chris Phillips is the Big Rig. And look, when we talk, let's move on to another series, unless you got anything more on this one.
No, let's roll.
Okay. Which series has excited you the most? Because I know you narrowed it down. There were really 4 series that you were going to be dialed into throughout the first round.
Easy answer. It's got to be Winnipeg and Colorado, Ross. Like that 7-6 game was everything you would want from a playoff game. Pretty awesome that you had boots on the ground for that one. And
I picked the right one of the 2 to go to.
Big time. Not that the other game was a stinker. If you're a Jets fan, you're not happy about it, but that was still a good game as well, because you got to see the Colorado Avalanche be like, okay, enough of that. We're going to turn things on here. And they had an incredible second period. So now back in Colorado, the altitude becomes a part of the discussion here for the Winnipeg Jets.
Extra day off though.
Hey, yeah. Hopefully they stopped in Nodak and trained in the altitude training room for a bit, but that's the best series in my mind.
And what we can go off of that, which is a wild stat too, 39-1 was the Colorado Avalanche home record in the playoffs or in the regular season.
Yep.
Winnipeg was 2-0 in Colorado. So 2 of their 9 losses at home in regulation came at the hands of the Jets, including a 7-0 beatdown on April 13th at the end of the season that gave Winnipeg home ice. But Colorado did steal it away with that Game 2 win. And man, like watching Cale Makar live, like he might be as good as McKinnon. Like watching those two, obviously McKinnon has the speed burst. He's got, obviously he's a centerman, so he's going to be in the offensive zone a bit more. But the way Cale Makar can get his shot through from anywhere, I think they've converted on 4 goals from his point shots, whether it goes straight in or there's a guy who gets a tip on it. And then You know who a little water bug out there? Like you don't notice him every single shift, but you look at the stat sheet. Arturi Lehkonen gets like 2 points every single night. It's he just puts himself in the right position. Like again, not the biggest name. He would be a perfect type of player for the Senators to target. Guys who just come up big. They have experience. They've been around the block, and it's not going to be Arturi Lehkonen, but a guy like that would be a huge addition to Ottawa this summer.
Well, that's why the Colorado Avalanche are so good at what they do, right? You got to tip your hat to the general management group there, because they're able to find these guys that they know maybe haven't quite had their chance or their moment yet. I'm talking about the Kadris, the
Middlestat even. I mean, he hasn't done it yet, but it was still a good bet to make.
Yep, Middlestat. Josh Manson was a great pickup for them as well. Like, there's just so many guys, Nichushkin. There's so many guys that they're able to see the potential in, and then they're able to help them grow in their right spots in Colorado. And I can't wait for the rest of this series, Ross. This is the best series in my opinion. Now, there's other good series too. Like Dallas and Vegas is still a good series, even though Vegas is up 2-0. Still really good hockey being played, but I think that's the one that's going to go to Game 7 is Jets Avs.
Okay, well, we've got plenty of time for playoff talk. We are your team every day here at Locked On Ottawa Senators. You can follow us for daily content online. I mean, we do have the show every single day, your team every day. No Belleville Sens coverage tonight, at least post game. I'll be watching. I'll be tweeting at Sens Central, but we'll break that game down on Monday. Hopefully, just one game, because a win tonight would put Belleville into the Sweet 16. We're just going to call it the Sweet 16, Pilsy. That way we don't get into a first round play-in, that kind of talk. We're just going with Sweet 16, baby.
Sure.
And that's where we want the Belleville Senators to be by weekend's end. Sunday would be Game 3 if necessary. Pilsy, we got some Sens news today on 32 Thoughts. I'll share those details with you next. Plus, we'll pay tribute to a legend in Bob Cole and have a proper game day preview. Belleville versus the Toronto Marlies. That's all coming up next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could pick the best handpick the best stars for your business team? Well, you got to use Indeed then. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one easy place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills. Do it all with Indeed. Candidates you apply to through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in the search. Indeed does the hard work for you. Sit back and relax. Sponsor a job, and they'll match you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your job description right when you post. Join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you got to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Today's episode is also brought to you by the GLEBE Central Pub. Go check them out in the heart of the Glebe at 779 Bank Street and let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. When you're at the GLEBE Central Pub, you're always going to have a good time because they've got great events going on at the GLEBE Central Pub. They've got their regular programming, like live music every Saturday night. They've got Taco Thursday, $5 each for beef, pork, or fish tacos. Then you look at Monday, wing night, 75 cents per wing, minimum of 10 per order. It's always delicious. It's always at the GLEBE Central Pub. The menu's great. They've got something for everybody at the GLEBE Central Pub. They've got their brunch menu, 10 to 2 on Saturday and Sunday. And every night, speaking of 2, they'll be open until 2 a.m. So you can get your late night bites, your late night grub. You can go hang out at the GLEBE Central Pub. You'll always be among friends at the GLEBE Central Pub. They're huge supporters of not only the Ottawa Senators, but here at Locked On Senators as well. So please let them know that Locked On Senators sent you, and go check out the great neighborhood vibe at the GCP, where the vibes are free. at the GCP. Find them at 779 Bank Street, right in the heart of the Glebe. Great food, awesome drinks, the atmosphere to match, beer specials every single day. There's always something going down at the Glebe Central Pub. Again, that's 779 Bank Street, and let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. All right, Pilsy. So it is a Belleville Sens game day tonight. It's a game you can watch on AHL TV. You can listen on the Belleville Sens Entertainment Network. You can find those links through the Belleville Sens website and on social media. But Pilsy, we got a tip coming from Twitter this morning. You guys have to listen to 32 Thoughts, the podcast. Not that we don't already, with Jeff Merrick and Elliotte Friedman, but I scrolled to the timestamp and I'm just going to play it. We have not heard, but this is head coaching information that Elliotte Friedman has received on the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, I have people just telling me to watch Craig Berube there. Bruce Garriock reported Dean Evison had been interviewed, which makes perfect sense. But I've had a couple of teams tell me they think that Ottawa really likes Berube.
There you have it. Ottawa really likes Berube. That is the insider I would trust the most. It also corroborates Bruce Garriock's report that we hit on yesterday. Your thoughts hearing that Craig Berube could be the next Sens head coach?
I like it. The only thing that confuses me, Ross, is if Berube is and was the guy, why isn't it done already? I guess the one thing you could say is Berube maybe is like, hold on, guys, like I'm definitely interested, but there's a lot of other teams.
That Tampa job could look good.
That's the thing, yeah. So that's probably the only thing that's holding that back then, I guess. But
he just feels like the perfect coach for Brady Tkachuk.
It does. It really does. And it brings me comfort to know that he's kind of the guy in the top running as opposed to John Gruden now. No offense
Who's
to
about
Gruden.
To get swept.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
About to get swept.
That's not a great look. And just we don't need a rookie head coach right now, in my opinion. That's all.
So are we narrowing down the Sens list to the currently employed Jon Cooper and Craig Berube? Is that our priority list for the Sens head coach?
Yeah.
I think that you could do a lot worse than Craig Berube. You look at it, he's got the experience. Obviously, people remember how he turned around that St. Louis Blues team that won the Stanley Cup in 2019, but he has had plenty of head coaching experience beyond that. Maybe not plenty as a head coach, but plenty of coaching experience, including as the head coach in Philadelphia with, both their AHL and NHL team. A longtime assistant on their bench was Claude Giroux's head coach then. So he would know a little bit about him. And then, I just think that he's obviously a guy who demands respect. He won the Calder Cup back in 04-05, which, I mean, that's got to be the hardest year to win the Calder Cup as a head coach, because that's when all the NHL talent was down there as well. So anyways, you look at it from a standpoint where you just want a guy with experience. You want a guy who's going to demand accountability and a guy who brings a winning pedigree. And that's 3 check marks next to Craig Berube. And I think it's really nice to hear Elliotte Friedman and the insiders and other teams around the league saying that, that's Ottawa's guy right there.
Yeah, and I think it'll be good, Ross, if they can get this done early. Like you mentioned, you wanted it done before the draft. It'd just be nice to have that checked off your list there. And then, you can have Craig Berube start introducing himself to the guys, start figuring out, where things are at right now, where players want things to go in the future, things like that. And then you got to start the search for the assistants, whether it'll be the Ottawa Senators that bring on the assistants or Berube will pick his own guys or 1 or 2 of his own guys. Who knows? It's just good to get this ball rolling because it seems like, Ross, this year more than most, there's a lot of head coaching turnover. Not that there usually isn't, but this year seems like more than the usual.
I feel like it's been a trend that's been more and more over the last half decade. But as we've kind of continued to go on this path, lots to be figured out. And there's still a couple interim tags who people aren't sure whether they're going to stay, like Travis Green with the New Jersey Devils. But teams without a permanent head coach right now, the San Jose Sharks, the Ottawa Senators, the St. Louis Blues, who I believe are out on Craig Berube since he was their not their last head coach. Sorry, they had a guy in between there. Who was their head coach between there? Anyways, neither here nor there.
I can't think of it.
They did have one between Berube, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Did they?
No, they didn't.
No, they didn't. Okay.
They did.
Nice. That
We
was
figured
talking.
that one out.
That was talking St. Louis Blues. And then the LA Kings, who, I mean, they're 1-1 with the Edmonton Oilers. I think this Jim Hiller could probably get another chance. But that's a few teams now that are going to be in the coaching carousel. How many do you think could be added to that? We talked about Tampa as a potential one if they get swept, but is there anyone else in the playoffs right now where if they lose that you think the coach could be in jeopardy? The only one for me would be Winnipeg, and it would more so be that Rick Bowness has had some health issues this past year. Yeah. Same with his wife. He's the oldest head coach now that Jacques Martin is no longer. He's going to be 7 years old next year. But what I'd say to that is Scott Arniel took over the head coaching duties while Rick Bowness was gone. I think it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to be the Jets' next head coach. So I don't think they're going to be in the same market that everyone else would be in. That's just me speculating, but I would say that that's pretty cut and dry.
Okay, that's interesting. No, I think Cooper would be the big guy that I would look at. Or else, I don't even think if Dallas loses, I don't think Pete DeBoer is on the hot seat. I mean, you're losing to the reigning Stanley Cup champions that are what $11 million over the cap and stuff. Like and they had a great season.
No, I agree with you, but you're also talking about the team that finished first place in the conference potentially getting swept. And they gave up assets to get Chris Tanev.
But I mean, Jim Montgomery was the Bruins head coach last season, right?
Correct. They went to Game 7 though, a little different.
Yeah,
Game 7 overtime.
I guess
flip a coin.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the Stars won't act that rashly. Like that's Jim Nill is not a guy that acts on emotional decisions and makes quick, harsh moves. So I don't see that happening.
Very fair. It's only DeBoer's second season behind the bench in Dallas. Before that, he was with Vegas, so could be a little revenge for the Golden Knights on him. All right, on the other side, we will pay tribute to Bob Cole, as well as get you a game day preview for the Belleville Sens. That's all next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Monopoly Go. Look, we've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime. End of the second period, scoreboard not looking so good. That's okay. You're feeling low. You're not sure whether your team can pull out a win. That's when you got to look at yourself. You got to dig deep, lift your head up and say, time to get back in the game. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do with Monopoly Go. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, charge other players rent for your iconic properties, and you can even work with your friends to crack open community chests in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put your game face on, download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. Check it out today, guys. Monopoly Go.
All right, Pilsy, game day for the Belleville Senators in Toronto, where they will take on the Marlies tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern. If you're heading to the game, send in your photos on Twitter at Sens Central. I always love seeing boots on the ground in the heart of enemy territory in downtown Toronto. How did we get here? Well, the Belleville Sens came through clutch on home ice Wednesday. Pilsy was boots on the ground. Now 48 hours later, Pilsy, how would you describe the effort that Belleville put in on that game, and what gives you the confidence that they can carry it into tonight?
Belleville just played a great hockey game after they got scored on right away, they were pressuring the Marlies every chance they had. The forecheck was really good for Belleville. They were maintaining offensive pressure in the O zone, and it just seemed like this was a Belleville team that was more prepared and more willing to do what it takes to get the win here. Like the Marlies just like nothing was going on. They didn't have any big chances. There was no players that really shined for them. So if Belleville's able to replicate their performance on Wednesday tonight, I don't see why they can't get this done and sweep and move on to the next series here. Ross, I know I've been a Belleville
super fan.
Super fan might be a push, but I've always
you just drove 7 hours round trip to see this historic first win. You are a Belleville Sens super fan.
All right, I'll take it. Nothing. There's no shame in that,
dude. You've got the Belleville Sens license plate perimeter with like, I got this at a Belleville Sens game. City.
That'll be next on my list. But like I always overhype Belleville. I will admit that. I think every single year, Ross, we do preseason hot takes. I have Belleville making it to the Calder finals or something ridiculous like that. But this year, with this lineup that we're about to unveil, I feel like I can actually back up that hype. And after watching them put an absolute clinic on the Marlies, I'm feeling more confident in Belleville than ever.
A clinic. Belleville didn't even give up double-digit shots in a single period. 4 in the first, 8 in the second, 6 in the third for a 3-period total of 18 shots against. Mads Søgaard was there to kick out 17 of them. Meanwhile, Belleville, 13 shots in the first, 15 in the second, the period where they pulled away with 2 goals to put them up 3-1, and then 10 more in the third. That's what I like the most, is that even when, in theory, Toronto would be pushing for pressure down 2 in the third, Belleville still, they didn't even bend. They were able to stay sturdy in their defensive structure and still control the puck more often than not. Tonight's lineup, we expect it to be the same as in game 1, which would be Rourke Chartier at center between Angus Crookshank and Igor Sokolov. We've got Matthew Highmore between Yuri Smejkal and Garrett Pilon. We've got Zach Ostapchuk with Wyatt Bongiovanni and Josh Curry, and then Boko Imama at left wing with Stephen Halliday dishing it around with Cole Reinhardt on right wing. On the back end, Tyler Clevin with Nicholas Matin-Palo, Jacob Larson with Max Gannett, and Donovan Sabrango with Ryan McKinnon. In goal, Mads Søgaard, the Great Dane, back in between the pipes. Give me a locked-on player to watch, Bills.
I'm going with the first star of game 1, Ross, number 10, Zach Ostapchuk. He was the best player on the ice easily. His goal was a really nice one, and then him and Curry had a nice give and go that Curry ends up putting in the back of the net. I just thought not only offensively, but he seemed very responsible defensively, and that third line, sure, it doesn't have kind of the big names. I mean, Ostapchuk, definitely a big name, but Bongiovanni and Curry are more kind of like supporting role players, but they work so well in that third line that I think they're going to have a lot more success moving forward here as well. So I'm going to be locked on to number 10, Zach Ostapchuk.
Great call. This guy just elevates his game in the playoffs, no matter what level. Had a goal and an assist in game 1. And what did he do? His first year in Vancouver was outrageous in the WHL when he made playoffs there. I've got it right here. 23 points in 12 games. 23 points in 12 games. And then, Bills, he gets traded at the deadline to Winnipeg, and I got to be boots on the ground for a penalty shot goal he scored in the playoffs. He had 9 goals and 15 points in 18 games with Winnipeg. So in 2 years in the WHL playoffs, he got to play in 30 games and had 38 points. Woo. So not bad. Playoff performer. And now he's a 2-point per game player in the AHL playoffs. That's a great call. Pilsy, I'm going to go with that top line. I'm going to put them all together in a little pot because we got 6 shots on goal from them, which you're like, okay, that's decent. Well, that's about what the Marlies got every single period. But I'm looking at Crookshank, Chartier, and Sokolov as 3 guys, and it's a good problem to have. But that line didn't produce any offense. So if they can beat the Marlies 3-1 without getting any production from their top line, how dangerous are they going to be when they do. And I don't know why I said 6 shots on goal. It's more than that because our guy Crooker had 5 plus a post himself. So maybe that's what I was thinking of there. Igor had 3 shots on goal. So that math guy, that's 8. And then plus 3 more. So that's 11 shots on goal for that top line. No idea where I got 6 from. No idea.
That's okay. It happens. Ross, even though they weren't able to score, that top line still was dominant. You knew every time they were out on the ice. Sokolov is just such a presence out there. And then Crooker, I mean, for a guy that hasn't played in a couple weeks and just gets thrown into a playoff game like this, he was pretty impressive. So I can't wait to see more of him.
I love it. So with that, we will see, I believe. And Igor, he is a villain in Laval and he's a villain in Toronto. And I'm looking forward to seeing how he reacts to that. So I'm just going to go with that entire top line. We'll quickly go through the Marlies lines that we saw in Belleville on Wednesday. Logan Shaw at center between Kiefer Bellows and Nick Abruzzi. We've got Quillen, Hervonen, and Joe Blandisi at right wing. We've got old friend Dylan Gambrell. I did not miss writing his name out on these graphics with Kyle Clifford and Alex Steves. And then you've got Josiah Slavin with Robert Mastro Simone and Solo on the right side. On the back end, Max Lajoie, Mikko Kokkonen. You've got Marshall Refi and Cameron Gaunt, and then Petroniro and Topi Niemela. We expect Dennis Hildeby to be back in goal. He was the Marlies' best player in game 1, 35 saves, big goalie, not a lot of room to score on him. And he's going to be probably the X factor, in my opinion, for the Marlies tonight. My lookout player, though, is going to be Kyle Clifford. Down a game in the series, a guy like him, veteran, Stanley Cup champion with the LA Kings. He's the kind of guy I'd imagine his message is going to be sent in the first 10 minutes of the game. I think he's going to be hard on the forecheck and try to rile up Belleville, take them off their game, and start thinking about payback. I think he's going to be a physical presence tonight.
Ross, there's a reason Clifford plays in the AHL.
Third line.
Yeah, I don't know. No offense to the guy, but he was kind of a zero out there. Boko Amama and him had a bunch of chats on the bench as they were meeting to go to each other's doors. And Boko, it seemed like he had the mental edge on Clifford there. And Clifford wasn't even throwing hits much that I noticed. Maybe I missed a couple, but I would have thought he had a bigger impact, Ross, and it didn't seem that way.
Okay.
So my lookout player is going to be number 11, former captain of the Belleville Senators, now captain of the Toronto Marlies, our guy, Logan Shaw. He was a really good player out there. That was a guy that it seemed like the Belleville Senators were keying on. They were finishing their checks up against him. So I'm going to be looking out for Logan Shaw. I think he's probably, he's the guy with veteran experience. He's the captain on that team. If there's going to be a shift in how the Marlies play, I think it's going to start with him.
Okay, game time, 7 o'clock tonight. Let us know in the comments what your prediction is for tonight's game. I'm going to go with a 4-2 win for the Belleville Sens. What's yours?
Oh, no, Belleville Sens win for sure. I'll be putting my money where my
goals,
mouth is.
How many goals is sure? 4 to sure?
I'm gonna say no. I'll stick with you, Ross. I think 4-2 is a nice score.
All right. I thought you'd put a 7 in there. We'll get to the daily spin. Pilsy's 4 for 4 on sticking at 7 in the NHL draft lottery. Still no date on the NHL draft lottery, which is
embarrassing. Come on. Like, don't they know there's 16 teams that is our Stanley Cup?
It's ours. Hand up. I just want to know when. Please let us know. We can't even get game times for the weekend because they need to figure out the schedule. Why was there no late game yesterday? These are all little issues. The big issue, give me the NHL draft lottery. I would always say back in the day, give me the Bob Cole game. Unfortunately, we lost a legend in the hockey world. Bob Cole passed away at the age of 90 at his home in St. John's, Newfoundland. He was the soundtrack to hockey every Saturday night for the majority of my life and yours too, Pelsey. What comes to mind when you hear the name Bob Cole?
Oh, baby. Everything is happening. Like, I was trying to rack my brain, Ross, like you start thinking, oh, what was the one call you think about? And for me, there wasn't really one call. It was more just that iconic voice and the way he used inflection I think, there's certain commentators that really rely on that. And he was one of those guys where you didn't need to watch the game. Like, you could listen to him on the radio and have a really good idea of when pressure was building, when big moments were on the way. And like you mentioned, like since the 90s, like that's the guy we heard. And growing up in the country without satellite, Ross, I only got to watch hockey when it was on CBC. That was one of the few channels I got. So whenever I was watching hockey, more often than not, it was Bob Cole on the call. So definitely a sad day for the hockey world, as he is recognized by pretty much everyone as one of the greats.
It certainly is. It just felt like he had that big game voice. Like when Bob Cole was doing the game, it just felt like it meant more. It was like, oh, something's going to happen that's going to go down in history. And he did call so many historic moments. You think they're leaving. They're leaving the ice in the 72 Summit Series where they're going home. So look, like an absolute legend. Obviously lost his fastball in the last couple of years of doing it. I was honestly shocked that he did it for as long as he did. Think about it. So he passed away at 90 years old in 2024. He was well into his 80s when he was calling that 2017 Ottawa Senators playoff run, where he did the Boston series for sure. Yep. He might have done the Rangers. No, I don't think he did the Rangers. He definitely did the Boston series.
Yeah, I know he did the Boston one. I'm kind of fuzzy on if he did the Rangers or not. But yeah, like for him to do it as long as he did it. And I was watching TSN Sports Center. They did a top 10 Bob Cole calls, and so many of Gretzky's big moments he was a part of. Like, I think 6 of the top 10 that they did were Gretzky moments. So like, it's to have an iconic guy like him call iconic plays from the great one matches up.
Yeah, it certainly does. Bob Cole, an absolute legend. Rest in peace. And we're thinking about the family and friends and everybody who had the pleasure of knowing Bob Cole. I'll tell just a very quick story, and that's during COVID, we were looking for guests for Leafs lunch, and my producer, Noodle's wife, actually, Steph, she was like giving me ideas. She's like, here's Bob Cole's number. Give him a call. Like, don't text him, ask him to come on. Just call him.
Okay.
Like, okay. Like, I've only been listening to this guy for like my whole life. Just call the number, and there's Bob Cole. He ends up talking my ear off for half an hour, just shooting the breeze, talking about maybe how he didn't like the way that he was let go from Sportsnet. He wanted to keep calling games, Pillsy. Right. This guy, if there's one thing you can say about Bob Cole, this guy had passion for the game of hockey, and it really came through in every single broadcast that he did. So once again, we're thinking about his family, his friends, and what a life lived by Hall of Famer legend Bob Cole.
And check out his book. I believe it's called Now I'm Catching On or something like that. I read it a couple years ago. Really good book, especially like to learn the upbringing of going from being a Newfoundland kid to calling some of the biggest hockey moments there are. It's a really cool story. So I would definitely recommend checking out his book.
Pillsy, you know what time it is?
Spins?
Time to get our 3 spins in. If you're new or just joining us here in recent times, we are a very sad pair of individuals because we are so obsessed with this draft lottery and trying to get it to go our way. We're doing 3 spins at the end of every show, 1 for the citizens, 1 for Pillsy, 1 for me, and we're keeping track up until the NHL draft lottery. Pillsy, you're up first as always. New Jersey jumps up 9 spots.
8?
So Pillsy gets number 8. First time that Pillsy has been outside of number 7. So Pillsy, you got the Senators at 8th overall. My spin. Oh my goodness. New Jersey back-to-back first overall.
Come on.
And Calgary moves up 7 spots to number 2. That means Ottawa all the way down at number 9. That is just, that's an awful play for me. Okay, Citizens got to save us again. Give me number 2 for the Citizens again.
Yes,
no.
Please.
Columbus and Montreal 1 and 2. This
bad.
Is an awful trio. At least Ottawa stays at 7 this time. So three different options today, Pillsy. You got 8, I got 9, and the Citizens get number 7. We'll every Monday we'll show off what we've got so far overall with the spins. And we're just waiting for the actual draft lottery. Should be sooner rather than later, but honestly can't come soon enough. Bills, any final thoughts on today's show?
Final thoughts for me is go Belleville, go to all the Belleville and Ottawa Senators fans in the GTA area. Head down to Coca-Cola Coliseum. Let's go. Let's get this sweep. That's what I want. Even though I want the people of Belleville to have as many home games as possible, let's just sweep this one up and clean it up.
Billsy, what does the A stand for in GTA?
Area.
Oh, okay.
I don't get it.
You're like all you Sens fans in the GTA area.
Oh, damn. That's the classic like pin number, those things. Yes.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
You got me.
Let's leave with a laugh. Billsy, great week. Another awesome week. People can go check out our interviews with Igor Sokolov, David Foote, and the real discussion here this week is what do you do with the Ottawa Senators free agents? You can go have your say on our videos on YouTube or on Twitter at Sens Central. Enjoy the game tonight. It's playoff hockey in the Senators organization. Cannot wait to break it down next week. We'll be back on Monday. For today, we say goodbye. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.